So basically, I've taken Misty Ann to this place. Her and her teacher have travelled. He's there as a sort of in loco parentis. They're in there with lots of other gifted kids. They've just got there. So I'm going from chapter 1 to chapter 16. Lots of great stuff happens in the next 15 chapters, but you'll have to buy the book to find out. And now this is Misty Ann speaking. I'm with the kid in the wheelchair. We're playing this game that's meant to break the ice and get us all to be friends. What we've got to do is to find out all we can about our partner in 1 minute, and then we swap over. When it's our turn to talk about ourselves, we can only answer the exact questions they ask. We can't just give our life stories. I find out that his name is Pete, that he has muscular dystrophy, that he's expected to be dead before he's 21, that he sports Spurs, that his dad tried to kill him 2 years ago because he couldn't cope with having a disabled son, but he got a suspended sentence, that he has a brother and a sister both older than him, and he used to have a pet rabbit called Guinness because it has a white head and a black body, and he reckons he's been chosen for this course not because he's gifted or talented, but because his teachers feel sorry for him. He tells me that his big ambition is to see Spurs play in the Champions League before he dies, and I tell him he's got no fucking chance. When we swap over, he doesn't find out much about me. I tell him some stuff, but his questions are pants. And anyway, we get talking about Keno and we don't have time for much else. And then when we have to feed back about what we've learnt to the group, and I'm not sure Pete wants everyone to know about the whole dying thing, so I stick to the stuff about Spurs and the rabbit. And I can see everyone looking at me thinking I've really missed the point, and that makes me fucking angry. I already know a bit about the fucking snob Charlotte I'm sharing a room with, because she told me. Didn't ask about me, of course, but managed to let me know that she was a veggie, practically a vegan actually, lives in Primrose Hill, wherever the fuck that is. Now, her dad owes practically half of Nigeria, and he's a chief and she's a princess or something. She's going to be a lawyer and then go into politics. Intellectually, I think I'm a social democrat, so that would normally mean Labour, but in terms of career advancement, I've got to think about the Conservatives. I mean, an articulate, high-achieving black lawyer, they'll be desperate to find me a major job, won't they? Those are her actual words. And later she says all this to Dalwinder, the Asian kid, so it's obvious that it's a routine, not even a good routine. We're all roughly the same age, and going round the room we find out that Dalwinder is from Hounslow and his dad works at Heathrow. He speaks about 4 languages. The Chinese kid is called Stephen and he's a poet, and the other white kid is a boy with proper long hair called Zach. He says he doesn't go to school and his mum educates him at home. I realise that this might be offensive to other people in the room suddenly. So anyway... I think at first it must mean that he's been chucked out, but it turns out his mum never let him go in the first place. She's like this mad hippie, yeah, he says. And then he says he can't read very well. But I can play anything on the guitar, and I'm really into conceptual art, like Tracy Emin and Sam Taylor Wood and Damon Hirst and that, yeah? The other kid boy is this black kid called Julius. And I decide that he's the one I'm going to shag. He's the best looking, but it isn't just that. He seems sort of shy and finds it hard to look anyone in the eye, but he smiles at everyone and just looks decent, you know? I mean, you can always tell who are the phonies and the fakers and the jerks, and this kid, Julius, just looks like he won't fuck you around. Also, he doesn't say that he's a poet or an artist or nothing. He's paired up with Zach, and Zach says, this is Julius Beddoe, and he wants to live a beautiful life. And John asks Julius what he understands by that, and he just spreads his arms and smiles. And he's got this most amazing smile. I mean, black kids often have great smiles, but Julius's is really the dog's, and I'm definitely going to shag him. We do some other games after that. We have to tell the whole group something that is true, but that we think will surprise them. And I think about telling them that I slept with a bloke for money once, but then I think, what if I tell from their faces that this doesn't surprise them? So I tell them that I can make myself faint whenever I want to, which I used to do all the time at primary school when I was bored. And I think about doing it just to show people I can, but in the end I decide I'm not in the mood. The other kids say some stuff, but none of it is surprising, not really. Ray's the warden of the place, tells us that he once had a mental breakdown and thought he was Jesus. He says he started to get better, but when they took him to the mental, he started to get better when they took him to the mental home, and there were already 3 other Jesuses on his ward. And that's sort of interesting, but not the sort of stuff you should tell a group of kids you're meant to be looking after. And JD, the teacher, tells us that he was in a band once, but no one looks very impressed. And then we play this game where Ray shouts out a number, and we have to get into groups of that number, and then he shouts out an object, and as a group we have to become that thing, like an aeroplane, say, or a duck. It's a dumb game, but it gets us moving around. And then Ray says we'll start the serious stuff tomorrow when Ariel is here. My room is big and decorated in white with 2 beds in it, like William and Harry's room. That's her kids. But about 50 times, her kid brothers, I should say. William and Harry's room, but about 50 times as big. And we've got our own bathroom, but Charlotte is going to be in there most of the time, I can tell. She spends about an hour in there just taking her makeup off and cleansing and that, and comes out looking just the same. I get so bored waiting for her to come out that I just get into bed. She's proper shocked. Miss Deanne, that's like really gross. You've got to take your makeup off. That's like the law, okay? But I tell her I can't be asked, and she looks at me like I'm scum, and I think about getting out of bed and wiping her toothbrush around the rim of the bog, but suddenly I'm totally smecked, and anyway, what if she's sick in our room? That would be like so shit. And when we're in bed, she says, Miss Deanne, and I go, yeah, and then she says, have you ever thought about being a lesbian? And I tell her no, and she says that everyone in her school is a lesbian right now. It's like the fashion, she says. And she says that the other fashion is to be anorexic, and I ask her how much it costs her dad to send her to school, and she says, it's like 15k a term or something. And I think that she's just a lying bitch, and tell her that I'm going to sleep. And just before I go to sleep, I think that it's funny that I never once have thought about being a lesbian. Not once. So I think about it now. And I think that doing it, the sex and that might be all right, but all the talking and being supportive and having to tell girls that, yeah, they look great, no, they're not fat, drive you mad, that would. Do you in. So there we are.